Alright, after a nice afternoon outing at a local farmer's market that I highly recommend checking out, I head an hour south to one of the two go-to poker rooms in San Jose. Game of choice is 235 no limit with the 2 being on the button, and I get things started off with this 8-handed game in for the max of 800. In the first notable spot, I'm dealt pocket queens and under the gun, and I raise to 20. Only the cutoff calls, and we go heads up to 8-5 deuce rainbow. I c-bet 20, and cutoff raises to 60. On a fairly dry board, I'm slightly surprised by this raise, since sets would probably want to mix in some slow plays. I guess he could be throwing in some fast plays with the occasional 2 pair, but what feels more likely is that he's trying to either protect top pair, or perhaps an overpair below queens, or semi-bluff a hand like 6-7 or 3-4 to get me off Broadway holdings. Queens is definitely continue on this board though, so I call, and the turn comes another 8, which puts up a backdoor flush draw. I check, and cutoff doesn't let up and puts out 110 with roughly 320 back. Pretty tough spot as I now lose to an 8, and I'm just hoping that he's got a draw or an inferior 2 pair. I'm not ready to let this one go though, so I put in the 110, and the river comes a jack of diamonds. I check, and he rips for 326 effective. Assuming that my opponent isn't taking this line with 9s or 10s, there isn't a whole lot I can beat on this board, and while he could be bluffing with 6-7 or 3-4, I painfully let the queens go, and look to shake things off as I add on to get my stack back to 800, and pick up ace-10 offsuit in the small blind. Button completes, I raise to 25, and only the button calls. The flop comes coordinated with jack 8-7 with 2 spades and a diamond, so not much going on from my hand, and on these connected boards, I like mixing in checks with both weak and strong hands. Button takes the green light and fires 25, looking to find a way to take this pot away on future streets. I call, and the turn comes a blank 3 of clubs. I check again, and button fires again, this time for a bet of 60. I now decide to entertain something fancy, as I have removal to the nuts, and I don't block any flush draws. I can also reasonably have strong hands like a set, so I have to put in a check raise to 230. I think even if my opponent has something as strong as 2 pair, this raise should put pressure on those holdings. And after a bit of deliberation, my opponent puts in the call. River comes a king of diamonds, which does improve some hands, but it doesn't really alter the overall board texture. With just ace high, I can't win by checking, so that leaves just one move, so I rip for 520 effective, and before I can even pray for a fold, I get snapped by the button who turns over 9-10 for the nuts. Unfortunate to run into it here, but credit to my opponent for the effective slow play, to send me on an unwanted trip to Stuck City for a pretty hefty cost of just over a bit of $1,000. I then reload for another 800 and get dealt ace-king offsuit in the big blind. We're playing 5-handed, and after 3 players look to enter a cheap pot, I raise to 35. Only the hijack calls, and we take a flop heads up, which comes 5 deuce deuce with 2 hearts and a spade. I fire a c-bet of 25, and the hijack calls. 4-3 comes to 6 of clubs, and this time I slow down as betting feels a little too thin. My opponent checks it back, and the river comes the 9 of diamonds. For similar reasons as the turn, I can't think of a good reason to bet, so I check, and this time the hijack bets 80. Good bet by my opponent as I probably don't have too many strong hands as played, and I think he knows that. I only beat nothing, so the question is if I think my opponent is capable of bluffing in this spot, and in the moment, I think he is, so I put in the call, and get shown queen 8 of diamonds for just queen high. A bit fortunate to pick this one off and get chips pushed in my direction for the first time this session, and I look to continue that trend as I pick up ace-king again, this time suited in clubs. There's a hijack raise to 20, and I 3-bet to 70 from the cutoff. Big blind cold calls, and the hijack comes along as well. We go 3 ways to a welcome side of 6-5-3 with 2 clubs and a heart, so aside from flopping a made hand, I get an easy board to continue on. After they both check, I put out 120, and that's enough to get the job done as they both fold, bringing the evening's deficit to around 800, when in the next shuffle I get dealt jack 10 of hearts in the hijack. After low jack limps, I raise to 25 and pick up 2 callers from the big blind and low jack. I find top pair and a flop of jack 6-3 rainbow, and after it checks to me, I check back for reasons that I can't fully explain other than what we've all felt before at a poker table, which is a bad feeling. The turn comes a king of spades, and after big blind checks, low jack puts out a bet of 35. Don't be much value here, but there are some draws available, so I call, and the big blind calls as well, making me like the situation even less as we take a river, which comes a 6 of hearts. Both players check, and I knuckle back. Low jack tables queen jack off to have me beat, and big blind tables king 8 of hearts to have us both beat, so things don't work out for the jack 10 suited, but I then pick up another suit at Broadway, this time in the form of ace queen of diamonds. After middle position and hijack limp, I raise to 30 and get 3 callers from the small blind, middle position, and hijack. We go 4 ways to the first 3 community cards in which I flop hard on ace-ace-5 rainbow. Checks to me, and I bet 40. Only the small blind calls, and we go heads up to the 9 of spades on the turn. Small blind checks with around 300 back, and hoping to cool off my opponent, I bet again, this time for 100. No cooler to be had though as small blind folds, and I take a stack a bit over 1,000 to the next hand, in which I'm dealt pocket 9s in the small blind. There's a low jack raise to 20, and I decide to mix it up and just flat. The problem is that there was a hijack 3-bet to 70 that I didn't see, so I sheepishly put in the 50 more to call. The big blind then jams for 323 effective. The initial raise on the low jack folds, and then the hijack 3-better, who's a tough opponent, also folds. For 260 more and a weird accidental spot to be in, I put it in to see the 5 cards, and it comes queen high with a 9. My opponent shows ace jack of diamonds, so the 9s hold up in one of the bigger pots of the day, and puts my stack a few hundred away from even, before I get dealt queen 10 of spades in the cutoff. We were playing short-handed, and after under the gun limps, I raise a 25. Under the gun calls with roughly 650 back, and we go heads up to king 3 deuce, all red. Nothing going on from my hand, but just hoping to take it down via c-bet. It doesn't happen as my opponent check calls, and fourth street comes to 8 of clubs. Under the gun checks again, and I'm thinking it'll be tough for my opponent to continue unless he has something like king jack, or a strong diamond draw, so I look to leverage the situation through a bet of 75. Under the gun isn't in the mood to fold though, and we see a river of a 10 of diamonds bringing in the front door flush. Under the gun checks with 525 in his stack, and having river second pair, I do have some showdown against small and medium pocket pairs that got sticky, so that does complicate my thought process in terms of whether to bet or check. If I had just queen high, I'd be more inclined to keep bluffing since that would be the only way to win, but I ultimately settle on a check back, and under the gun wins with king 5 of clubs. Obviously not the hand I wanted to see, as a river bet might have got him off it, but as the saying goes, you don't want to be results oriented in poker. And if you agree, please hit the like and subscribe buttons as I stick to process-oriented poker in this next one with pocket 8s from under the gun. I raise a 20, only the hijack calls, and the flop comes 10-6-3, all clubs. I see bet 15, and the hijack calls. Turn comes a deuce of diamonds, and in trying to simplify the situation, I want to say that my opponent is split between a 10 and a strong club draw. I could be pretty much dead against a flush and value owe myself against a 10, but I decided to keep betting, this time for 50 in an effort to extract value from club draws. Hijack calls again, and the river comes a 4 of spades putting up a one-liner, which shouldn't be all that relevant. That said, I'm unlikely to get value from worse through a bet, so I check this time, and hijack checks back. I turn it over, and it's good as my opponent gives a friendly knock on the table, and hoping to continue the momentum, I then get dealt ace queen of diamonds for the second time today. Middle position and cutoff limp, and I raise a 30 from the big blind. They both call, and we go 3 ways to queen jack 7 with a club draw. I see bet 50, and only the cutoff calls. 4th street comes to 8 of hearts putting up another flush draw, and completing 9-10, which hasn't been good to me this session. Can mix here, and opt to take the more passive route and check. Cutoff checks it back, which is a good sign that he doesn't have a super strong hand as we take a river, which comes a board pairing 7. I will lose the trips on occasion, but I can comfortably go for value hoping to cool off a queen, or get a hero call from a jack. I bet 200. I'm unable to garner a call though, but it's nice to win consecutive pots, as I pick up ace 7 of clubs in this next one. The straddle is on, and I raise a 35 from the hijack. Straddle defends, and we go heads up to 8-5 deuce rainbow, giving me some decently strong backdoor possibilities. Straddler check calls my range c bet of 25, and the turn comes a queen of clubs giving me the nut flush draw. Always nice to pick up a card to keep barreling on, and I do just that for a bet of 80 after the straddler checks. This time he folds, and I carry roughly 1500 forward into this next one with a nice looking king jack of diamonds. I raise a 20 from under the gun, and middle position, who's a good player and a friend, decides to flat. Button then decides to put in the squeeze to 90 with roughly 500 back. I decide to call, and then my friend in middle position rips for about 730 total. Button's hang folds, and while I've got 40% of the best hand that you can make in poker, the only thing royal in this one is my friend being a pain in the ass. My opponent is going to get this one through with some well-timed aggression. Don't know what he had, but I have this friend saved on my phone as Jesus Shuttlesworth, because he's got game and probably ripped it with a hand like king deuce suited, which he considers a premium. Following this one, I lose a string of small to medium sized pots before I decide to try a new table. I'm immediately dealt a playable one with pocket 6s in the cutoff, and it's a family pot until the big blind raises to 25. Under the gun calls, and the hand gets even more strange as the limper in middle position min raises to 50. Folds back to me, and I call with devilish hopes, and the big blind and under the gun come along as well. We go 4 ways to ace 10-7, all black, so I whiff unfortunately. Action surprisingly checks to me, and I'm happy to take a free card, so I check back, and the turn comes a 3 of hearts. After big blind and under the gun check, middle position bets 110. This hand has been pretty strange thus far, and given that big blind and under the gun don't seem too interested in this pot, I make a fairly loose call as I have no idea what to put middle position on. The other 2 players fold, and we take a river, which comes another 3. Middle position continues with the aggression for 200, and still baffled by what my opponent can have, I convince myself that he could just be betting 2 pain cards, so I put in the hero call. I look like an idiot though as he tables ace queen for the goods, and I don't even get to process this blunder as I get dealt 6s again in the next shuffle. Feeling like it's a redemption opportunity, I raise a 30 from the hijack after 2 limps. Button, middle position, and low jack call, and we take a flop multi-way which comes 10-4-4 rainbow. Checks to me, and I see bet 60 for protection, and to try and gain clarity on what my opponents may have. Only the button calls, and the turn brings a 9 of hearts. While my opponent may have floated the flat with Broadway holdings that I'm still ahead of, it's also quite possible that my opponent has a 10, and given that I've got the overpair range advantage, I decided to turn my hand into a bluff and bet 240 hoping to get him off a 10. My opponent thinks a bit and is undeterred as he puts in the call. Alarm bells ringing off now as he may very well have stronger than a 10, so when the river rolls off the 7 of hearts, I shut this one down. My opponent rips for my roughly 400 effective. Get wrecked in this one unfortunately, and that brings us to the last notable hand of the session, in which I've got Queen 10 offsuit on the button. We are 6-handed, hijack raises to 15, and I 3-bet to 50. The blind surprisingly cold call, and that gives a good price for the hijack to continue as well. We go 4 ways to Jack 5-4 with 2 hearts and a spade, so not much to work with here. Action does check to me, and I play this one straight up and check back. 4 suit is a good card though, as it comes a Queen of Spades giving me top pair. The blinds check, and the same nemesis from the first pocket 6's hand puts out a bet of 100. I call, and the blinds fold. River comes a board pairing 5, and hijack sticks with the aggression and fires 125. It's possible that my opponent river trips with 5x of spades, or already had me crushed with Queen Jack, but a ton of stuff did miss on this board, so I call, and my read is way off as hijack tables Jack 5 offsuit for the full house. Hopefully this helps to slightly justify my pocket 6's call from earlier, but if I wasn't tilted already, this definitely did it. Alright, wrapping things up in this one, no longer in San Jose, and after about an 8-hour session that ended at 1:45 in the morning, I was admittedly too tired and a bit too tilted, as you saw at the end there, to shoot a proper outro on premise. So the day actually started out really well with some quality family time and hanging out with Cindy, and I wanted to change it up for the vlog, and so I headed over to San Jose, which is about an hour drive for me, and I haven't vlogged from Bay 101 for some time now, and I figured it'd be nice to just mix it up for the vlog. I want to continue to try to do that and bring it to different places when I can. Excited to play, and got put in a tough spot with queens in the beginning, and then I tried to make a play with the ace 10 that didn't work out. And then from that point on, I thought I played some decent poker just to navigate the different situations that came up. And then obviously at the end there with the pocket 6's back to back, that's when the wheels came off, and the nail in the coffin was just losing to the Jack 5. So that's how that session went. Bought in originally for 800, which is the max, and then I added on for a total of 1900. So in that game for 2,800 and out for $849. So that's a pretty big loss of $1,851. Wasn't able to bring back some of that run good that I had at Bellagio. And yeah, just 2 things to close this one out. I've been dabbling in some 5-10 PLO at Lucky Chances as of late, and just throwing that out there in case you guys are interested in watching some PLO on this channel. It's obviously a bit harder to vlog with 4 cards and all the editing, but if there's enough interest from you all out there, I'm happy to try and at least make one video of some PLO. It's a pretty fun game. Obviously plays fairly big given that it's 5-10, but if there's interest, please let me know via a comment down below. And the one other thing is that the meetup game at the Hustler Casino has been rescheduled for March 19th. It's a Saturday. We're playing 2-3 no limit. All the details are on the screen. I hope to see at least some of you out there. I appreciate the continued support with these vlogs. It takes a lot of time and energy to record them, edit them, but knowing that you guys are appreciating them does give me that extra motivation to keep making videos. So thank you for that, and I'll see you in the next video.